What if the end has already been shown to us? What if, in the flickering images of a 2-minute trailer, the entire battle plan, every sacrifice and every tragic reunion of the final season is laid bare, hiding in plain sight? We're told this is the final chapter, the last stand for Hawkins, but the clues suggest the end isn't just a battle. It's a ghost story told in radio waves, a tale of fallen kings and corrupted heroes. We gotta know, Team Steve, Jonathan, or Eddie? Drop it below because your answer might just change by the end of this. The story of the end begins not with a bang, but with a crackle of static and a desperate search for the right frequency. What if the ultimate weapon against a psychic god isn't another psychic, but a sound, a frequency, a vibration that can shake the foundations of the Upside Down and the monster who rules it? For 4 seasons, the fight against the dark has been one of brute force, psychic power, and desperate gambles. But the trailer for the final season hints at a fundamental shift in strategy, a move from the supernatural to the scientific, a plan centered not in a secret lab, but in the most mundane of places, a local radio station. It's a theory that begins with a single, powerful image: Steve Harrington on top of a van in the dead of night, wrestling with a large radio antenna. He's not just looking for a clear signal, he's trying to aim something to direct it. This isn't a passive act of listening, it's an aggressive act of broadcasting. The question isn't what he's trying to hear, but what he's trying to say and who or what he's trying to say it to. This single shot, seemingly simple, recontextualizes the entire conflict. It suggests the team has discovered a new vulnerability in Vecna, one that goes beyond physical attacks or even 11 psychic assaults. It points to a weakness rooted in the very fabric of the Upside Down, a dimension that has always been linked to electromagnetic fields and radio frequencies. The static, the flickering lights, the voices bleeding through walkie-talkies, these weren't just spooky side effects, they were clues. They were the monster's language, and now it seems the kids are finally learning how to speak it back. The evidence for this weaponized radio theory is woven throughout the entire trailer, presented like a detective's corkboard of disparate clues that slowly form a terrifying picture. Let's rewind to that first shot of Steve. He's on the van, yes, but look at the context. The sky is dark, tinged with the familiar, ominous red of the Upside Down bleeding into Hawkins. This is not a casual repair. The urgency in his posture, the way he's manhandling the heavy equipment, speaks to a desperate, last-ditch effort. Now let's connect this to the show's own history. In Season 1, how did they first make contact with Will? Not through a vision, but through a radio. Joyce, in her frantic state, heard his voice crackling through the phone before it shorted out. The boys, with their powerful Heathkit ham radio at the school, managed to establish a fragile, fleeting connection, hearing Will's ghostly singing from across the dimensional divide. It was 11 who amplified that signal, who punched a hole through the static with her mind, but the medium was always the same: radio waves. The show established from its very first season that radio is a conduit, a bridge between their world and the Upside Down. Now, in the final season, it appears they are no longer content with building bridges. They want to burn them down using the very same technology. The trailer then cuts to a shot that reinforces this escalation. We see military trucks, heavy and imposing, rolling into the broken town of Hawkins. Yet juxtaposed against this show of official force, we see the kids, our heroes, casually riding their bikes past them. This is a powerful visual statement. It tells us that despite the military's intervention, despite the government finally taking the threat seriously, the real solution, the real fight, still rests on the shoulders of these children, these underdogs. The military, we see later, is trying to solve the problem with flamethrowers. a brute force approach to closing the gates that are now scarred across the town. But the kids, it seems, have a smarter, more elegant, and infinitely more dangerous plan. Their weapon isn't fire, it's frequency. We see them gathered around a map in Mike's basement, D&D figures spread out just like in Season 1. They aren't planning a frontal assault, they are planning a strategic strike. And the centerpiece of that strategy, the new magic item in their campaign, appears to be the massive radio antenna Steve is wrestling with. They aren't just trying to talk to the Upside Down anymore, they are trying to scream into it. The most chilling piece of corroborating evidence for this theory isn't subtle, it's apocalyptic. It's the shot of the colossal radio tower of Hawkins, the central broadcasting antenna for the entire region, with the swirling, monstrous cloud of the Mind Flayer, or Vecna's consciousness, circling it like a vast, cosmic vulture. The monster isn't just looming over the town, it is fixated on a specific target. Why this tower? Why would a being of immense psychic power be drawn to a simple piece of broadcast equipment? The answer has to be that the tower represents a threat. The kids' plan, it seems, is not just to use a mobile antenna on a van. That's just the prototype, the test run. The real plan is to scale up, to hijack the most powerful transmitter in the state, a station that the transcript of the trailer breakdown mentions is 50,000 watts, and turn it into a cannon. They plan to blast a specific targeted frequency into the Upside Down, a sonic weapon designed to disrupt, harm, or even destroy Vecna himself. This explains why Steve is now apparently working at the radio station, a detail hinted at in the trailer. It gives him access, knowledge, and a central role in the final plan. It also explains the look of pure terror on Robin's face in a separate shot as she stares up at that same tower. She isn't just looking at the monster, she's looking at the heart of their plan, the place where their friend is about to do something impossibly brave and likely suicidal. This theory also neatly ties in other disparate shots. Hopper, a Vietnam vet with training in demolitions, is seen throwing grenades. Joyce is wielding an axe. These actions might not be part of the primary attack, but rather a desperate, chaotic diversion. They are drawing the attention of the ground troops, the demodogs and other creatures, to buy Steve, Robin, and maybe Dustin the time they need to arm their sonic weapon. It's a classic multi-pronged attack, and the radio tower is ground zero. The final piece of this puzzle is 11. We see her preparing to enter another sensory deprivation tank. If the radio waves are the weapon, what is her role? Perhaps the waves alone are not enough. Perhaps they need to be focused, guided. Could it be that the radio waves can amplify her powers, giving her the strength to deliver a psychic payload through the broadcast? Or maybe it's the other way around. Her psychic energy is needed to fine-tune the frequency, to turn a blast of random noise into a precise note that will shatter Vecna's connection to their world. The radio isn't a replacement for 11, it's an upgrade. The implications of this theory are massive, fundamentally reframing the final season from a simple psychic showdown into a complex science fiction heist. If the key to defeating Vecna is a weaponized radio frequency, it means that the fate of the world doesn't rest solely on 11's shoulders. It becomes a true team effort where every member's unique skills are not just helpful, but essential. Steve Harrington is no longer just the cool babysitter with a nail bat. He becomes the engineer of their salvation, the reluctant soldier tasked with arming the doomsday device. His character arc, which has been about finding a purpose beyond high school popularity, culminates in him becoming the most critical technical operative in the war. Robin, with her quick wit and ability to crack codes, would be indispensable in figuring out the logistics of hijacking a radio station. Dustin, the party's resident tech genius and radio enthusiast, would be the brains behind the operation, the one who likely theorized the sonic weakness in the first place. This theory elevates the non-powered members of the group, giving them an agency in the final battle that is equal to 11's. It also creates a far more tense and strategic climax. The final act wouldn't just be a CGI-heavy slugfest between Eleven and Vecna. It would be a desperate, ticking clock scenario. While Hopper, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy are engaged in bloody, physical combat on the ground, creating a diversion, the real battle is one of science and nerve at the top of a radio tower. The central conflict becomes, can they get the broadcast up and running before the Demogorgon hordes overwhelm their protectors? Can Steve hold his ground long enough to flip the final switch? It transforms the narrative into something akin to Return of the Jedi, with a multi-front battle where success on one front is entirely dependent on the success of another. Furthermore, it explains the military's inevitable failure. Their approach, as seen with the flamethrowers, is clumsy and conventional. They are fighting the last war. The kids, however, are fighting the next war, using intelligence and ingenuity over brute force. It reinforces the central theme of the show, that the outcasts, the nerds, and the weirdos, the ones who see the world differently, are the only ones capable of saving it. The weaponized radio theory means the end game is not about who is strongest, but who is smartest and who is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the broadcast goes live. What if death in the Upside Down isn't an end, but a transformation? A horrifying recruitment. For 4 seasons we've seen characters die, their losses fueling the grief and resolve of our heroes, but we've never truly known what happens to a body left behind in that dying, toxic dimension. The trailer for the final season suggests we're about to find out, and the answer is a fan theory so perfect, so tragic, and so deeply rooted in the show's own lore that it feels almost inevitable. What if Eddie Munson, the metalhead martyr of Season 4, is coming back? Not as a hero, not in a flashback, but as Vecna's right-hand man, a twisted, monstrous version of the friend they lost. It's a dark what-if that starts with a simple, heartbreaking shot. Dustin, standing before Eddie's grave, a makeshift cross in the woods, desecrated with the words, "Burn in hell," scrawled in red paint. This moment serves as a painful reminder of how Hawkins saw Eddie as a satanic cult leader, a murderer, the cause of their suffering. But for the fans and for Dustin, he was a hero who died protecting his friends. The theory posits that this is not just a moment of grief, but a setup for the ultimate betrayal. He's not resting in peace, he's being remade. The evidence for the return of Eddie as a villain is built on a foundation of Dungeons & Dragons lore, the very mythology the show uses to understand its monsters. In the D&D universe, the Archlich Vecna has a powerful, undead lieutenant, a vampire knight named Kaz, the Bloody-Handed. Cass was once a mortal man, Vecna's most trusted servant, before being turned into a creature of darkness to serve his master for eternity. The parallels are almost too perfect to ignore. Eddie, with his Hellfire Club, his love of all things metal and macabre, and his bat tattoos, was already visually coded as a creature of the night, a benevolent vampire in the eyes of his friends. He was literally killed by a swarm of demobats, creatures from Vecna's own hive mind. What if those bites weren't just fatal? What if they were infectious, a way for Vecna to corrupt and claim the soul of a powerful, defiant spirit? The most crucial piece of evidence is a narrative choice made by the Duffer brothers. They left Eddie's body in the Upside Down. Dustin returned with only the news of his death and his guitar pick shield, a soldier's dog tag. Why not show them recovering the body? In a show this meticulous, loose ends like that are rarely accidents. They are doors left intentionally ajar. Leaving Eddie's body in that toxic, transformative dimension allows for his reanimation. Vecna, having been defeated but not destroyed, would need a general, a physical presence to command his armies in Hawkins while he recuperates. Who better than the boy who defied him so bravely, the leader of the Hellfire Club himself? The theory gains even more weight when we consider the final shot of the trailer's montage. A shadowy figure, presumed to be Vecna, stepping through a dissolving fiery portal. The YouTube commentary notes that the face is obscured, and while most assume it's Vecna, the ambiguity is tantalizing. What if it's not Vecna making his grand entrance into our world, but his newly anointed servant, Cass the Betrayer? Imagine a figure clad in the tattered remains of Eddie's jean jacket, his face pale and scarred, his eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent light. It would be a reveal of jaw-dropping, heartbreaking proportions. This theory is corroborated by more subtle, thematic clues. Eddie's entire arc was about being misunderstood, about being seen as a monster by a town that didn't know him. The ultimate tragic irony would be for him to actually become the monster they always thought he was. It's a classic trope of dark fantasy, the fallen hero, and it would fit perfectly within the show's 80s horror homage aesthetic. His final words to Dustin were, "I didn't run away this time, right?" He found his courage, he made his stand. For Vecna to corrupt that moment, to twist his heroic sacrifice into an eternity of servitude, is exactly the kind of psychological warfare Vecna excels at. Think about the Demobats. They aren't just animals, they are extensions of Vecna's hive mind. When they swarmed Eddie, they weren't just killing him, they were connecting him, plugging him into the network. His death could have been the beginning of a horrific cocooning process, a metamorphosis fueled by the dark energy of the Upside Down. The visual of his grave being defaced is more than just a plot point about the town's paranoia. It's a foreshadowing. The world of the living has rejected him, has literally told him to burn in hell. What if the Upside Down, Vecna's hell, is the only place that will have him? It's a dark mirror of Eleven's story. She was an outcast who found a family and became a hero. Eddie could be the outcast who, in death, finds a master and becomes a villain. This would also provide a deeply personal antagonist for the final season. The Mind Flayer was a colossal, impersonal threat. Vecna is personal to Eleven, but a corrupted Eddie, that is personal to Dustin, to Lucas, to Mike, to the very heart of the party. It makes the fight not just about saving the world, but about saving, or perhaps being forced to destroy, the memory of their friend. If Eddie Munson returns as Vecna's general, the entire emotional landscape of the final season is irrevocably altered. The stakes are no longer just about global annihilation, they become deeply, painfully personal. The primary implication is the devastating impact this would have on Dustin. Eddie was more than a friend. He was a mentor, a kindred spirit, the older brother figure who saw him and accepted him completely. Dustin carries the weight of Eddie's sacrifice, a guilt that surely haunts him. To have to face a monstrous, evil version of the man he idolizes would be a psychological torture far crueler than any physical threat. Would he be able to fight him? Could he bring himself to harm the face of his fallen friend? This conflict would become Dustin's ultimate test, forcing him to move beyond being the bard or the tech guy and become a warrior in his own right, confronting the ghost of his own past. The ripple effects would spread through the entire group. It would create a strategic nightmare. A corrupted Eddie would know their tactics. He knows how they think, how they fight. He was part of their plan to defeat Vecna. Now, as Vecna's servant, he could dismantle their strategies from the inside out. He could anticipate their moves, turning their own cleverness against them. He would be the perfect Judas, the ultimate insider threat. This theory also provides a powerful narrative symmetry. The final season would have two of Vecna's children on opposite sides of the war. 11, the child who rejected him and escaped, and Eddie, the child he claimed and corrupted in death. The final battle could culminate in a confrontation between them, a battle of two outcasts who chose different paths, one of light and one of darkness. The implications for the show's lore are also profound. It would confirm that the Upside Down is not just a place of decay, but of dark creation. It doesn't just kill, it transforms, it repurposes. This opens up terrifying possibilities. If Eddie can be turned, what about Barb? What about the countless other victims? The Upside Down could become a necropolis with Vecna as its necromancer, able to raise an army of their past failures and lost friends against them. The Eddie as Kay's theory transforms the final season from a monster movie into a Greek tragedy. It's a story of heroism twisted into villainy, of grief weaponized, and of a friend who must be fought like an enemy. It would be a bold, gut-wrenching move, and it would ensure that the final victory, if it comes at all, is soaked in tears. What if Vecna's greatest mistake wasn't in killing Max Mayfield, but in failing to? What if, in the moment he broke her body and stole her sight, he inadvertently left a back door open in his own mind, a back door that only she can access? The trailer shows us Max, still in a coma, a tragic figure in a hospital bed, with Lucas faithfully reading to her. But then it shows us something else, a fleeting, terrifying glimpse of a different reality. We see Max, awake, her eyes wide with fear, wearing those same hospital scrubs but now running for her life through the dark, decaying corridors of the Upside Down, hunted by a Demogorgon. This isn't a memory. This is happening now. This suggests that while Max's physical body lies dormant in Hawkins, her consciousness is trapped, a prisoner in Vecna's realm. And this is where the theory begins. Max is no longer just a victim. She has become their unwilling spy, their oracle inside the enemy's stronghold. The theory posits that when 11 piggybacked into Max's mind and brought her back from the dead, she didn't just restart her heart. She forged a new, unprecedented type of connection. For a moment, 3 consciousnesses were intertwined: Vecna, Max, and 11. The raw power of 11's love and rage, forced into that psychic nexus, may have done more than just save Max. It may have left an indelible psychic imprint, turning her into a living, breathing connection to the hive mind. She is their new Will buyers, but with a crucial difference. Will was a vessel, a puppet, for the Mind Flayer. Max, having faced Vecna and survived, might have a degree of autonomy, a consciousness that can observe and perhaps even navigate the Upside Down, all while her body remains in a coma. The deep dive into the evidence for this theory begins with the nature of her death. She was clinically dead for over a minute. Her bones were snapped, her vision gone. Vecna had completed his ritual. But 11's intervention was something he could never have anticipated. It was an act of resurrection fueled by love, a force completely alien to him. This event fundamentally breaks the rules of his power. It's an anomaly, and anomalies create unpredictable side effects. The shot of her being hunted in the Upside Down is the primary piece of visual evidence. She's not a ghost, she's tangible, running, interacting with the environment. This means her mind, her consciousness, has a real presence there. She is, for all intents and purposes, a psychic projection trapped behind enemy lines. Let's compare her situation to Will's. In Season 2, Will's connection to the Mind Flayer gave him, now, memories, flashes of insight into the monster's actions. He could feel what the monster felt. The trailer shows Will touching the back of his neck. The familiar chill bumps a sign that his own connection to Vecna is still active, a lingering scar. If Will's much more passive experience in the Upside Down left him with a permanent psychic link, imagine the connection forged with Max. She wasn't just in the Upside Down, she was inside Vecna's mind lair, the very heart of his power. She confronted him directly. He personally invaded her mind, feasted on her trauma, and killed her with his own hands. The connection must be exponentially stronger, deeper, and more volatile. This could be why she's still in a coma. Her mind is literally in two places at once, unable to fully return to her body because a part of it is still tethered to Vecna's domain. The corroborating evidence is more thematic, rooted in the show's history of turning trauma into strength. Every major character has used their pain as fuel. Joyce's grief turned her into a relentless investigator. Hopper's loss of his daughter made him a fiercely protective father. Eleven's entire power set is tied to her traumatic memories. Max's journey has been defined by her trauma. The abuse from her brother Billy, the guilt over his death. Vecna used this trauma as a weapon against her. The ultimate narrative justice would be for her to now turn that connection, the very source of her pain, back against him. She knows his weaknesses because she has seen them firsthand. She survived his mental assault. This makes her uniquely qualified to fight him on a psychological level. Furthermore, consider the shot of the original boys, Mike, Will, Lucas, and Dustin, huddled over a map with D&D figures just like in the old days. They are planning. What new information could they possibly have that would require such intense, old-school strategizing? They could be mapping out the Upside Down based on information fed to them from the inside, from their very own spy, Max. Perhaps they found a way to communicate with her, to receive her psychic dispatches from the other side. This would give them an unprecedented tactical advantage. They wouldn't be going in blind anymore. They would have real-time intelligence from an agent embedded deep within the enemy's territory. This also raises a terrifying question. If they can see through her eyes, can Vecna see through theirs? The connection could be a two-way street, a dangerous psychic gambit where every piece of information they gain comes with the risk of exposing their own plans. The implications of Max becoming a psychic oracle are game-changing. It elevates her character from a tragic damsel in distress to one of the most pivotal figures in the final battle. She would no longer be a liability to be protected, but an asset to be utilized, albeit a fragile and endangered one. Her comatose state becomes the central ticking clock of a new kind of mission. How do they use the information she's providing to defeat Vecna before her consciousness is completely consumed or discovered by him? It gives Lucas a powerful, active role. His mission is no longer just to sit by her bedside and hope. It becomes a desperate quest to protect the conduit, to find a way to strengthen her connection or pull her back before it's too late. His love for her becomes a literal shield for her mind. This theory also presents the possibility of a stunning new development. Max could gain powers of her own. If Eleven's psychic energy literally resurrected her, it's possible some of that power was transferred, or that the traumatic intersection of three powerful minds unlocked a latent potential within Max herself. The shot of a Demogorgon reaching for someone in the Upside Down, the transcript speculates it's Max, could be a misdirect. What if she isn't just running? What if she's fighting back, discovering a nascent ability to manipulate her surroundings in the Upside Down? The Oracle of Max theory gives her arc a powerful, meaningful conclusion. Her journey, which has been about running from her pain, would culminate in her running directly into the source of it to save her friends. It would mean that her sacrifice in Season 4 wasn't in vain. It wasn't a failure. It was the move that placed their most valuable chess piece on the board, right next to the enemy king. What if the most beloved character is destined for the most heartbreaking end? What if the entire series has been a long, slow march towards the heroic sacrifice of the one person who has grown the most? Since Season 1, fans have been predicting the demise of Steve Harrington, the bad boy turned best babysitter. But the trailer for the final season seems to be screaming that this time it's real. The theory is simple, brutal, and tragically perfect. Steve Harrington will die in the final season, sacrificing himself at the radio tower to save his friends and the world. It's a theory built not on a single clue, but on a convergence of plot points, character arcs, and blatant visual foreshadowing that paints a grim and heroic picture of his final moments. He's had more near misses than anyone, from the junkyard battle to the Russian bunker to being nearly torn apart by Demobat. The show has been conditioning us for his loss, and now, it seems, the time has come to pay the bill. The narrative is pointing like a compass needle towards his final, noble stand. The evidence is laid out in the trailer like a funeral procession. It starts, as we've discussed, with Steve on the van with the antenna, establishing his connection to the weaponized radio plan. But let's dig deeper. The transcript mentions that Steve is now working at the local radio station. This is not a random career choice, it's a deliberate placement of a key character at the exact location that will become the climax of the entire series. He has the access, the knowledge, the keys to the kingdom, or in this case, the keys to the broadcast booth. The trailer shows the massive radio tower not once, but multiple times, each time framed with a sense of dread. The most telling shot is of the colossal Vecna cloud swirling directly around it. The monster knows this place is the threat. The battle will be fought here, and who is the guardian of this location? Steve. Then there is the shot of Robin. She is looking up at this same tower, her face a mask of pure anguish and terror. She is not looking at a monster, she is looking at a person. She is watching a friend, someone she loves, willingly walk into the heart of the storm. Her expression is one of grief, of witnessing a sacrifice she is powerless to stop. Combine this with the other shots. Steve driving the van, now a makeshift battle cart, through the muck and grime of an upside-down incursion. He is on the front lines, a soldier driving his weapon into position. All of these clues point to a single, inescapable conclusion. The plan to use the radio tower as a sonic weapon against Vecna will require someone to be at ground zero to operate it, a manual override, a final switch to be flipped. And Steve, the eternal protector, the one who always runs towards the danger to save the kids, will be the one to volunteer. The corroborating evidence for Steve's sacrifice isn't in the plot, it's in his soul, it's his entire character arc. No character in Stranger Things has undergone a more profound transformation. He began Season 1 as a shallow, arrogant jock, the quintessential 80s movie bully. His redemption began with a single act of courage, returning to the Byers' house to fight the Demogorgon, choosing Jonathan and Nancy over his popular friends. From that moment on, his journey has been one of shedding his old self and embracing his new role as the group's reluctant but fiercely loyal guardian. He became Dad Steve, the protector of the party, the one who would stand between the kids and any monster, human or otherwise. A heroic sacrifice is the only narratively satisfying conclusion to an arc this complete. It's the final, ultimate act of redemption, the moment the former king of Hawkins High lays down his life for the nerds he once would have ridiculed. His death would be the ultimate fulfillment of his promise to protect these kids. His relationships with Dustin and Robin are the emotional core that makes this theory so potent and so painful. His bond with Dustin is one of the show's most beloved dynamics. He is the older brother Dustin needed. For Steve to sacrifice himself to save Dustin would bring their relationship to a devastatingly poignant close. And his friendship with Robin, a platonic bond of deep love and mutual respect, would make her the witness to his final act, the one left to carry the story of his heroism. His death would not be a random casualty of war, it would be a choice, the final, most important choice of his life. The implications of Steve's death would be seismic, sending an emotional shockwave through the audience and the remaining characters that would dwarf any previous loss, including Bob's or Eddie's. Steve is original cast. He is the heart. His death would signal unequivocally that the story is truly over and that no one is safe. It would raise the stakes for the finale to an almost unbearable level. It would be the show's "I love you, I know" moment, a sacrifice that ensures the victory is bittersweet. On a narrative level, his death would serve a crucial purpose. It would force the other characters to step up in his absence. It would particularly impact Dustin, who would be forced to finally shed the last of his childhood innocence and embrace the leader he was always meant to be, carrying the mantle of his fallen mentor. It would galvanize the group, turning their fight from one of survival to one of vengeance and remembrance. His death would become their rallying cry. Furthermore, it would fulfill the show's commitment to its 80s horror and action movie roots. As the YouTube commentators noted, sequels in these genres like Aliens or Terminator 2 are often about raising the stakes through significant character deaths. Steve's sacrifice would be the ultimate homage to this trope, a moment of epic, cinematic heroism. It would be the emotional climax of the entire series, a moment designed to leave the audience shattered but also filled with a profound sense of catharsis. If the weaponized radio is the how they win, Steve's sacrifice is the why it costs so much. It ensures that the end of Stranger Things is not just a happy ending, but a real one, scarred by loss and ennobled by the memory of a hero who started as a king and died as a guardian. When you lay all the pieces out on the board, the disparate theories from the trailer no longer look like isolated possibilities. They begin to connect, to interlock, forming the blueprint of a single, epic, and devastating final battle plan. It's a strategy that relies not on one hero, but on the unique strengths and tragic destinies of every member of the Fellowship. The entire endgame appears to hinge on the central, audacious concept of the weaponized radio. This is the master plan, the scientific Hail Mary, designed to strike at Vecna in a way he can't defend against. But a plan this grand requires multiple moving parts, and this is where the other theories slot perfectly into place like gears in a complex, tragic machine. The execution of this plan falls to its most unlikely engineers, the Scoops Troop, reformed for one last mission. Steve, with his access to the radio station, and Dustin, with his technical genius, are the architects of the weapon. Their mission is to get the tower online and broadcast the frequency that will, they hope, sever Vecna's connection to our world for good. But how do they know what frequency to use? How do they know this will even work? That's where the Oracle of Max comes in. Max, trapped in her coma, but with her consciousness wandering the hostile landscape of Vecna's mind, becomes their inside source. She is the reconnaissance agent, the one who can observe Vecna's weaknesses from within. Perhaps through fragments of communication, through Lucas's patient vigil, she is able to feed them the crucial intelligence they need, that Vecna, a being of pure psychic energy, has a vulnerability to a specific sonic or electromagnetic frequency. She gives them the target. Her tragic state is not a sideline to the main plot, it is the catalyst for the entire strategy. She provides the what, and the radio team provides the how. This synthesis creates a clearer picture of the final battle's structure. It's a three-tiered assault. Tier 1 is the brute force diversion. This is where we see Hopper, a seasoned soldier, throwing grenades, and Joyce, a mother fueled by righteous fury, wielding an axe. This is also where Linda Hamilton's new military character and her forces come in, using their flamethrowers and heavy artillery. They are all, knowingly or not, creating chaos on the ground, drawing the attention of Vecna's physical army, the Demodogs, the Demobats, away from the true target. Their fight is loud, explosive, and designed to look like the main event, but it's a feint. Tier 2 is the psychic front. This is Eleven's role. She enters the sensory deprivation tank not to engage Vecna in a direct psychic brawl, but to act as a spotter, a targeting system. She will use her connection to find Vecna in the vastness of the Upside Down and psychically paint him as a target, allowing the radio wave weapon to be focused with pinpoint accuracy. She might also act as a psychic shield, protecting the minds of the radio team as they work, or amplifying the broadcast with her own energy. She is not the cannon itself, but the sophisticated guidance system that ensures the shell hits its mark. And then there is Tier 3, the most critical and heartbreaking part of the plan, the delivery system at the radio tower. This is where the theory of Steve's sacrifice becomes the linchpin of the entire climax. He isn't just a random casualty. His death is a built-in component of the plan. The weapon may require a manual activation, a dead man's switch, or it might cause a catastrophic energy surge that is unsurvivable for anyone at ground zero. Steve, in his ultimate act of protection, volunteers for this one-way mission. He is the one who will climb the tower, align the antenna, and flip the final switch, knowing he won't be coming back. Robin's horrified expression is that of someone watching her best friend willingly become a martyr for the greater good. But every great plan needs a great obstacle, a worthy antagonist to threaten it at every turn. This is the role of the resurrected Eddie Munson, Vecna's new general, Cass the Bloody-Handed. While Vecna himself is being targeted on the psychic plane, he unleashes his new, corrupted lieutenant to stop the plan in the physical world. A monstrous Eddie possessing knowledge of their tactics and a personal connection to the heroes would be the perfect saboteur. Imagine the final confrontation as Steve is fighting his way up the radio tower and 11 is locked in a psychic struggle. Who stands in the way of Dustin and the others on the ground? A twisted, vampiric Eddie. This forces Dustin into an impossible choice: fight the monstrous version of his idol to save the world, or falter and let the entire plan fail. It's a battle for the soul of Hawkins, fought on multiple fronts, where every victory is intertwined with a devastating loss. Max's intelligence guides them, Steve's sacrifice powers their weapon, 11's power aims it, and Eddie's tragic return is the final boss battle they must overcome to even get a shot. All the disparate pieces from the trailer, the military, the D&D map, Max in the Upside Down, Steve at the tower, Dustin at the grave, snap together. They aren't just random cool moments, they are the sequential, interconnected story beats of a single, cohesive, and utterly tragic finale. The question is no longer if they can win, but what will be left of them and their hearts when the static finally clears. So the stage is set, the theories converge into a single, terrifying narrative. This is no longer a collection of spooky what-ifs, but a potential roadmap to the end of everything they've fought for. The final battle for Hawkins will not be won by a single hero, but by a symphony of sacrifice, a coordinated assault where every player has a critical and often tragic role to play. It begins with the mind of Max, their oracle in the dark, her consciousness, a fragile beacon providing the enemy's secrets. It is enacted through the ingenuity of Dustin and the bravery of Steve, who turn a humble radio station into the world's most powerful ghost-killing machine. It is guided by the immense power of 11, who acts as the psychic crosshairs for their final, desperate shot. And it is all defended on the ground by the grit of Hopper and the fury of Joyce, who buy them precious seconds with blood and fire. But this grand plan is threatened by the most painful of ghosts. The return of Eddie Munson as Vecna's Dark Knight isn't just a physical obstacle, it's an emotional bomb set to detonate at the heart of the party, testing their resolve in the cruelest way imaginable. Steve Harrington's journey from selfish king to selfless guardian seems destined to end in a blaze of glory atop that radio tower. His death, the terrible price for their victory. Every piece fits. Every theory serves the whole. It's a story of science and sorcery, of love and loss, of a fellowship of outcasts making their final stand against a god of their own making. If these threads all pull together, the final season won't just be an ending, it will be an elegy, a tribute to the heroes who fall and the scars carried by those who survive. The final question, then, is not whether they will stop the darkness, but what happens after. When the battle is over and the silence descends, who will be left to pick up the pieces? And can a town or a group of friends ever truly heal from a victory that costs them everything?